Hello, welcome to another installment of Curtis Jones Writing. I'm reading each chapter, every chapter out of each book that I've written, and I'm on my third book, which is entitled Imagination Stories That Say What If. I'm on chapter 8, and I think this book only has 9 chapters in it, if I'm right. Yeah. And these last 2 chapters were written after the Love Endures All Things, uh, the Deep South, which is the third in the trilogy of Love Endures All Things. This will be the first one. And after I've completed the imagination stories, I will start reading the Love Endures All Things. The Love Endures All Things trilogy and the 2 books of Dad's Old Truck, volume 1 and 2, tell my entire life story up until I was about 71 or 72 years old. Anyway, so let's get started with Imagination, Chapter 9, or Chapter 8. It's entitled Out the Window. Uh, Stephanie and I, my wife Stephanie and I, had bought the house I live in here about 10 or 11 years ago. We were living in Florida, and I was preaching at a church in Florida, in Interlachen, Florida to be exact. And when it came time for us to retire and come up here, we looked all over Alabama and finally found a house near Union Springs, Alabama, and that's the one we ended up buying. And we made trips up here over the next year about every month or 6 weeks. We'd come up and we'd do something to the house to improve it so that we were comfortable when we moved into it. And on one of the later trips, as we were getting close to finishing up here, Stephanie and I took turns driving. It's about a 6 hour drive, and we'd bring a trailer with equipment and tools and supplies to do the things we wanted to do to the house. And we were going back home, and that's what the trip out the window is. That's when it occurred, going home, and we got over on Interstate 75 going south when the events that make up this story happened. So let's start with chapter 8, Out the Window. Road Trip Humor from 2012. That's when this happened. Oh, I can't believe that's 10 years ago. Anyway, my wife and I had just spent 4 days in the country in Alabama working on a house we had bought to retire in when that time came. We were very tired and ready to come home to the house in Florida where we lived. The trip up had gone uneventful, other than the strange driving habits of most of the driving public. I'm talking about the folks that cut you off or those who pass you very quickly, then slow to a pace less than you were before they passed you. Those that make you slap the center of your forehead, wondering where they got their license. We had hoped for the same on the way home. We were sore and stiff from the work in Alabama, and we had become quiet in the cab of the truck, though we had not been rude to each other yet. We knew that when tired and in a hurry, we could be. 45 years together will teach you when you hold it in and when you need to fold it. We have learned that letting go rarely leads to anything good. My wife, bless her heart, is a preacher's wife, but that doesn't give her immunity from anger. I'm not immune either. We have had our difficulties over the years. We also carried our dogs in the front of the pickup with us, which took up more room than we wanted to share. Had a Shar and a uh, Dachshund. We loaded all the tools and the portable generator, which we ran the house on, and started out at 8 a.m. There was little traffic, and the trip was going fine while I drove the first 3 hours through the backwoods of Georgia. The sun was peeking through the gathering clouds, and we hoped for a rain to help break the monotony of the trip. We had already made several stops looking for our favorite snack, the Golden Flakes curlicues, which might say, which you might say they are on the short list of snacks in heaven as far as I'm concerned. Those snacks are in few stores and they seem to switch from store to store over time. We finally located the curlicues and promptly picked up 4 bags before trading off driving and getting on I-75 at Tifton, Georgia. We opened one bag as soon as we hit the freeway and found the calming effect of such a much loved snack that it can generate in even a testy old soul like me. Even the dogs moving around in 3 circles on the floor before lying down was acceptable now. As the mile markers passed like sentinels or silent sentinels on the roadside, the sky overhead had begun to darken and become more menacing. The rain soon broke out, and the wipers and headlights came into service as we slowed our pace just a little, as did all the other cars on the road. If you've never driven in the South in a very heavy rainstorm, you have missed something to see. It can become so heavy that it appears to be like thick fog, in that you can't see the cars in front of you anymore. Many stop driving when this happens, and nearly everybody uses their flashers as a warning system. The rain had not become so heavy as to slow us more than 10 miles per hour. We were running about 60 when a little white car pulled up alongside of the pickup. We had a trailer behind us. I was in the passenger side and didn't notice the frantic driver in the car at first. I did note that the car alongside was maintaining pace with us. The car then began to surge forward and back several times, and I looked over at the car. There was a man in the driver's seat, and he was alone in the car. I would guess him to have been in his mid 70s. He had a full head of very white hair and a little round face. This fellow was making intense gestures at me and seemed to be pointing at the truck tailgate or maybe even at the trailer. I was not sure what was going on, so I made the gesture that I could not understand by raising my shoulders and turning my hands toward the sky. At this gesture, I would guess his face began to turn a light red. I could tell he was frantic to relay some information to us. I looked at my wife and I pointed to the car next to us, and then I rolled down my window just a little because I thought that some terrible thing had happened, and I had a good Samaritan who would be there when disaster struck. We were still running about 55 miles an hour when I heard him yell out of his window. And it was hard to understand, but when I heard the words come from that car, I was amazed. The words gave me a chuckle, and I thought I might have misunderstood him. I said in a loud voice, as loud a voice as I could, "What?" As I looked intensely at him. His response was what I thought I had heard the first time. He yelled once more, a little louder. This time I recognized I had heard right the first time. His words, though broken by the sound of the wind streaming by, the tires on the road, and the hiss of the rain against the cars, came more clearly this time. He said, "Your wife cut me off back there." I thought how foolish to chance getting the attention of some fellow that carries a weapon and perhaps making him angry. I have never carried a weapon in public myself, so he was safe on that count. When his words reached my ears, I responded with these words: "Your wife ran off?" He yelled back, "No." Again, repeating the words, "Your wife cut me off." I responded with my own brand of humor. I said with a loud voice, "Your wife is not in this truck." As we continued to race down the freeway, his face became redder, and I was worrying just how far this fellow was willing to go to tell me what he thought. The rain still pouring down, so I did not move my head out the window, but I rolled it down a little bit more and yelled back to him, "A white truck had passed us, and he might be looking for her there." As we sped down the road, he craned his neck out his window and yelled once more. This time his face was as red as a fire truck, and his shirt had gotten wet from the heavy rain. And he said, "Your wife cut me off back there." By now, I was beginning to be ashamed of what I had put this old man through, and was becoming concerned that he might have a stroke or some other physical disaster from the strain I had allowed him to bring himself to. I thought I should respond to his efforts to gender an apology from me. I finally yelled back to him in a more shallow voice, "I'm sorry." And he slowed and fell in line behind us, and soon was vanished into the rain in the far distance to the rear. I then turned my attention to my wife and began to laugh, and she was not amused at my apology for cutting him off. You see, my wife is a professional driver, and she prides herself on being a good driver. I had caused her to feel bad for making an apology for what she had not done. I now owed an apology to my wife for apologizing. I had just made for her driving. I knew we would be spending the next few minutes talking about her driving and this fellow's misunderstanding. There are 3 lanes of traffic on I 75 there, and my wife and this fellow had passed a semi on opposite sides, and my wife had pulled into the center lane from which she had come moments earlier. My wife said this fellow had been in the slow lane from way back and wanted the center lane after he had passed the semi. Our pickup was ahead of this fellow's car by at least a car length, or a trailer's length, I should say. We had passed the big rig first and was moving to the center lane when the old man tried to move and could not see us for the rain and the road splash. This clearly put my wife in the right in the incident. I think that the old man was overcome by fear, and that's why he wanted an apology. I began to tell my wife I trusted her driving and that I had been toying with the old man to see just how far he would be willing to go for the apology he thought he needed. I told her about his red face and wet shirt and how he seemed to be driving faster than he was comfortable to get an apology, and perhaps I should not have put him through this ordeal. She calmed down, and we had several laughs about this the rest of the way home. Road humor. I hope you enjoyed this little short story. Uh, Next time I present, I will do chapter 9, and I'm going to try to get this done so that next week I can start doing the Love Endures All Things trilogy and get that finished up so uh, we can move on from there. Uh, this is the third book, and one more story, it'll be complete, and I'll start on the next book. I have 14 books to work through, so enjoy yourself, take your time. If you like what I'm doing and are in a hurry and want to hear the stories ahead of time, you can go to my webpage, which is curtis-jones-books.squarespace.com. And there's a link there that'll take you to Amazon so you could get the books there. They come in ebook form and they come in paperback. And I've recently been starting to put them all in hardback. So, excuse me, so that we could, people that want to give them as gifts to loved ones, like for Christmas or birthdays, there'll be a much sturdier book. And so I hope to hear from you. Tell me what you think. This is my Curtis Jones author page on Facebook. It has links also to Amazon. Both of them have links to the Montgomery Public Library posting. Before COVID, I was presenting seminars on how to publish yourself, and I talked recently in a post. And I ended up writing this book because so many people want to know how to write and publish books, and it's not difficult, and anybody can do it. God bless you and keep you until next time we meet. And if you like what I do, hit the like button, hit the share button, and share it with those you think would like to hear these stories too. Most of my stories are true stories. God bless and keep you till we meet again.